questions? Anything with the minutes of the previous meeting? Okay, thank you.
You're on the screen, you're just
I
not
know.
going out to the world.
Look it up, yeah. All right, thank you. So minutes of the previous meeting, we're okay with that, everybody? Next is our communications, the letter from the Amherst IDA, and that was regarding the uniform tax exemption policy. I wasn't quite clear on that. Can you?
I honestly haven't read it.
Okay,
I will get, and
because it was a little bit confusing with the IDA, and I wasn't sure what
I
they were talking about.
didn't have an opportunity to read it, so I will. Read it.
Okay, no problem. We had a couple of Phillips Lytle and Harris Beach gave us on the OSHA Supreme Court blocks the vaccinate or test. So that's on hold. And then we got some nomination letters. Did everybody get what they just sent to me? Because I do have a letter from Andrew if anybody wants to read that. I don't know if it was the same letter. So sometimes that. There you go. Next is any other communications?
Actually, I have one. I was contacted by Mellot Little League last night. There's a couple of things that they discussed with me. One, they're offering a winter clinic for 6 to 10-year-olds at the North Amherst Rec Center. And they're looking for volunteer high school and softball players to help out. Could be used for in-service hours. I passed that information along to Miss Daria, Mr. Campolo, the baseball coach, and Miss Carlson, the softball coach. So Mr. Campolo actually got back to me, and he's going to put it out to his team to see if there's anybody interested in that. And they also wanted to know if they can get permission to use the turf field for some under light games for their travel teams, and maybe next winter even get back into the turf gym as
So how
we've
do
had
we
that partnership with them
do
before.
that? As far as
I mean, I know Don, I've worked with Don on doing
Beautiful.
that before when I was with Mellot. So I think that system is kind of in place already for that to happen.
No, yeah,
Excellent.
they'd be welcome to have them. We've had them in the past. Depending upon availability at the turf complex, we work around their schedules. And
Well, we have such a great relationship with Mellot for
Absolutely.
so many years, and a lot of our kids are in Mellot, so it's a great relationship. Anybody else? All right, moving on to our first open session. As per board policy 1512, we hold 2 open sessions at each meeting. The first session is limited to comments on agenda items for tonight's meeting. The board welcomes attendance and participation by district residents, people having business within the boundaries of the district, and people who do business with the Board of Education. Speakers must be at least 16 years of age and will be limited to 3 minutes. Please preface your comments with your name, address, and group affiliation if appropriate. Non-district residents must include the name of their business or how they do business with the Board of Education. All speakers in this open session must state which agenda item they are speaking to. Any takers? All right, seeing none, that takes us. Or you can stand right there.
Actually, we would prefer that you go.
Let's go to the podium so we can hear you.
Yeah, I just wanted to protest any
Could you just, excuse me, just preface with your name and address, please?
do I have to?
Oh, it's per, this is a public record. We just
Well-
want to make sure you're part of our district.
I'm part of the district. Well, my son is. I prefer not to give my address.
Okay, go ahead.
Or my name is James.
Okay,
And yeah, I don't really appreciate any mask mandates being enforced. And any vaccine, especially not any vaccine that's not FDA approved. I don't see why we would force that upon our kids. It doesn't make much sense. I'm really playing a speech, sorry, but I think it's despicable, disgusting. These things that, they touch them all day, it probably spreads more COVID. They get yelled at to take them, put them above their nose and everything, they want all the fresh air. If you guys are for that, I shame you.
2 more minutes.
2 more minutes. I think in Canada, I don't think they, I don't even think they make them wear masks all day long. Pretty bad up there too with all the vaccine and mask stuff. I think it's like unenforceable. A lot of the schools or some of the schools in New York City, they don't make their kids wear masks. It should be optional. I don't need to co-parent with the government. If I want to protect my kid with a mask, I think that's their right, parents' right. They could send their kid to school with a mask, but forcing my kid to wear one is doesn't make me happy. I'll come back next time with a better speech. Sorry.
It's okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Address that.
I will
And
address that in
yes.
in my
And we hope
report.
you stick around for at least the superintendent's report because he is going to be addressing that. So just a few more minutes. All right, anybody else? All right, this takes us to the superintendent's report.
Okay. Mr. LeMay, so the best way to do that. Do I go to Virgil's and screen preferences? Okay. That's fine. Okay. It is. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mrs. Jason. First, I just wanted to say, as a reminder, we have some upcoming events for the board. Our February 12th budget workshop will be at 9 a.m. this Saturday in the new service center. So we're looking forward to holding it there. I know many board members were at the service center for our soft opening last Friday. I think it was an overwhelming success, and it really is a beautiful showpiece now for the district. And we're trying to make it an absolute great place to work. Agenda items will include the budget workshop, first review of our budget, a mid-year review of the board goals, a mid-year review of the superintendent goals, and I will ask for an executive session to discuss a personnel matter. Also, of course, the public is invited to be there because it is an open session on the 12th for the first 3 items. Anyway. On February 15th will be our voting session. Our last road show is at Glendale this year. We'll talk to Mrs. Dimitrov over there, and she's excited to host the board. And so next Tuesday night we will be at Glendale, and she promises to have a show for us. So I won't let the counties back, but I think it's going to be riveting for sure. So I apologize for all the words on here, but I wanted to make sure I fully updated the board on where we are in the masking situation. And so it's all started really, well, it didn't start, but this has been a topic of conversation all year long, but it really came to the forefront on January 24th. And it was one of those things that, again, we weren't really expecting, came out of the blue, and I think it was like at 7 o'clock at night. My phone started blowing up that the Nassau County Supreme Court ruled that the masking order by the governor is unconstitutional. They cited a procedural reason why it was unconstitutional. And we got together as a team, Mr. Feldman, Mrs. Bayless and I talked to Mrs. Jason that night as well, and we decided to put out a communication to our community regarding this ruling. And it was pretty much put out right away by the New York State Education Department that the masking in schools would still have to be enforced, and the mandate was still on in schools while this played out in the courts. On January 25th, Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz reiterated that Erie County has a mask mandate in place for all public places, including schools. So he was out the next day saying that the mandate was still in place for schools in Erie County as well. On the 28th, the New York State Department of Health appealed the Nassau County ruling to the New York State Appellate Court Division. And then the court that night issued a stay to the Nassau County ruling that kept the masking in place. I sent a note out to families again that night just to let them know where we were as far as the law is concerned, and that the masking mandate was still in place based on the rulings of law. On February 1st, and so, you know, while I bring this up because a lot of this throughout the 2 years of the pandemic has been the Friday, we call it, school districts call it the famous Friday night memo, where you're home for the night and all of a sudden, bam, a new rule, a new regulation is out there, and our emails start to blow up and we have to get communications out. So I was happy and proud to sign that letter on February 1st to the governor, based from the Erie Niagara County school superintendents. It was me and 50 other superintendents in our area, asking the governor to give school districts advance notice if there was going to be changes in the mandate. We didn't want the Friday night memo to come out because this topic, is we know, is the most controversial when it comes to our COVID guidelines. So we asked the governor, please give us time so we can prepare our communities, we can gather input from our communities in order to make proper decisions for our communities. And I'll get into it a little bit today, but I think she listened to that. Not just our letter, but other counties in the area, school superintendents submitted letters asking for the same thing. And then I sent a note out to families again on February 4th with a message regarding this letter and what it meant and why I was proud to sign it. So where are we now with this? Today, as of now, mask mandates are law and they remain in place. And they're law at the state and the county level. And I know that, again, I will say that it is controversial, but right now there's really no wiggle room. The masks are law, and we have to have them. So as we start to decipher what this means or where we could go, everyone's calling it off-ramp language. We're asking for patience in our community as we evaluate what's going on. But I think we're all safe to say that we're just not there yet as far as our metrics are concerned. While our numbers are going down and we're happy with that, there's still COVID in our community. Not that we're going to get to zero anytime soon. I don't think that's a reasonable expectation, but certainly we could be in a better place. And it looks like the numbers are trending towards that. You may have also heard of the February 21st self-imposed deadline by the governor to end the mask mandates in school. That deadline will likely pass, and the governor is going to speak tomorrow. But the New York State Council of School Superintendents issued a communication to all of us this afternoon saying that the governor indicated that deadline will pass and that the mandate will be extended past the 21st, mainly while this plays out in the courts of appeal. In the Court of Appeals. So on the 21st is the deadline. I expect masks to be in place by state mandate after the 21st. What they didn't like today is, and I know Mr. Johnson was on the call, according to NISCUS anyway, there were no specific metrics. The governor did not provide specific metrics for why she wants to end the mask mandate. So although she has hinted at she's looking at she would like to see higher vaccine rates, higher vaccination rates, and of course, lower numbers. I know that we've had discussions about this internally every single day, and what are we to keep the board informed and how we want to communicate this to our community. But I can say that since January 24th, I've sent out 3 or 4 communications, and any rulings or changes to the law that come, I'll send out more, so we can interpret them and make sure that we're all on the same page as a community on where this has been in the law anyway. We've already started preliminary discussions with our unions here to get input from them as well. We had a meeting this morning actually regarding that. And I know the superintendents are meeting regularly to discuss safe off-ramping measures as well as the COVID regulations. And I will say this, that whenever we consider any off-ramping or any changes, that safety has got to be considered our top priority, and it always will be from district office anyway. And we're also going to review things like our numbers, where we are with COVID, what our test to stay numbers are, what our transmission rates are at Sweet Home, the mental and social, emotional well-being of our students, faculty, and staff, and then how can we safely balance laws with smart and safe policy out there. So, you know, since the 24th, I will say this again, it's been a constant communication back and forth, not only externally but internally on where we're going. I think, you know, we all can agree that, you know, masks aren't going to be around forever, and there's going to be a time when it changes, but we're probably not quite there yet, and we've got a ways to go, but we need to be prepared for when changes to the law happens, and we will be. So
And this is not up to us at all.
this is not up to us at all right now, and it might be, but we don't know that yet, and
No, it's
so right now, no, right now.
I just got a couple things.
Yep.
I know, I see you signed it February 1st. I know the letter was dated February 2nd. That's when it went out. I was disappointed we didn't find out about it then. I know you've sent communications about other things. We didn't hear about that until February 4th on your normal update to us. So I found out about it from the news. I hate finding out about stuff from the news, especially something as big as important from this. And then from our families, I went and looked it up on the SSA Twitter page. That's how I found out what actually was written. This particular text that you put in here on the previous page strongly concerns me about exercise discretion about mass schools and schools on our own behalf. We are educators. We're not epidemiologists. We're not doctors. We shouldn't be the ones making this decision. It should be the Department of Health. I'll get into much more detail later on when we come to the benefits of the memorandums, but I did participate on the Zoom call with the governor today, and the superintendents were not in step with every other group that talked today. The rest of them all wanted this to be Department of Health issues. The superintendent seemed to be ready to take it on their own. That was disappointing. So that's, I've also had people reach out to me who didn't understand this and why we would support this. So that's my thought on it.
Any comments, any questions on this part?
Can you clarify in this section that Mr. Johnson highlighted? Are you asking for schools to have the opportunity to exercise discretion, or are you asking for time to prepare when we will be forced to use our own discretion?
I think it's time to prepare, and knowing that the laws and regulations can change at a moment's notice. Having lived through this since the beginning, I think that's what we're looking for.
So are you're looking for a notice for when the situation arises that this will be dropped in our laps, but you're not saying that this should be an issue.
We decide.
Right.
Okay, so I think that's a very important distinction, because it does, I think maybe, I don't want to speak for Mr. Johnson, but that was the part that concerned me, is that it came across as if superintendents were asking for this to become an issue for school districts to decide. But that's not what the letter was asking.
That's not what my signature intended to do.
Okay, that's important
That
clarification.
is definitely what some of our family members believe, and they were asked me to ask you what your position was on the mask use, specifically because of reading that line.
Okay. It's honestly not my position to decide. So I think it's the board's. If it comes to that, then, but I signed it asking for time. So we could do things like this, to talk about this, to have this in discussion, to gather input. I've talked to the unions already. This is not my decision.
Because I personally can agree with that. The other interpretation was a little bit more alarming to me.
I think that some people may have taken it like, I even responded to community members that that was not how that was written, in my opinion, and not how it was meant to be. That it was just asking for off-ramping language and time from the state, knowing that they have made the mandate themselves, not schools.
That wasn't intended to say, let it be up to school boards.
It was intended to just give us time, because
None of that Friday evening at 5 o'clock.
that's all I'm at. That's all we were asking. Yeah.
Anything else? Anybody have any other questions regarding that?
I will just say that on a quick read of it, I was initially, that might be my initial interpretation of like where there's a support here for not using MassMap, but I will also say then when I read it more closely, the details of that language, I will say, I had the impression that it was just asking for time. You know, time, like if this is where things are going, don't just throw this at us, give us time to make that decision. So I could see how it could have been interpreted the other way, but again, on more careful reading, I think that it seemed I didn't get the impression that that this was a letter saying we want to do away with masks, and that so I appreciate that you making that clear, because I think that is an important distinction.
I honestly, in my mind, never even went there. That's, we didn't talk about this prior to the meeting tonight. And so I wanted, and I didn't know how you felt about it, Mr. Johnson, but, I hope you noticed what I put in my presentation, that there's a lot of things to consider before all this changes.
Yeah, and I'm with you, Mr. Johnson. I mean, I hope that I wasn't able to participate in the NISBA meeting this afternoon, but I should hope that somebody's going to tell the departments of health, do your job. Do your job. Stop pushing it on people who are not qualified to make these decisions. Excuse me. So I hope that at least with our representation, we might head in that direction.
Yeah, that was the response from the majority of the other groups that met with the governor's office today, including a forceful one for the chairman of the Conference of Big Five Schools, which represents 46% of the students in the state. And he said, do not, emphasize not, leave decisions to superintendents and boards. It's not the responsibility of educators or local departments of health. It's the State Department of Health.
Okay.
I got a whole bunch more, but I'll save that for
Yeah.
that. It goes on quite a bit.
Thank you for making that clear. And thank you for bringing that up so that you
Yeah.
could clarify that
Yeah.
for us.
Important message to get.
It is.
Any other questions? Just an update on where we are with the North Amherst Community Center. I've had discussions on Friday and today with Supervisor Culpa. He has the final language agreement, and it's being reviewed by the town. I think they've agreed on pricing, which I think is the most important one. He informed me today that he wanted me to inform you that year one is paid for through a block grant, and year two is when the PIF will take over. And they've expected, and I know that's the deadline, but they expect it to be executed by the town board meeting on February 28th. So it's looking good, and I appreciate the communication with the supervisor on that.
So year one would be from the start of whenever the community community center is functional, right?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Just wanted to make you aware of an agenda item on substitute pay. This is a topic that we wanted to bring to your attention because, again, we want to remain competitive. We know that subs are at a premium for sure, not only teaching subs, but also in the service area as well. And so we wanted to propose new rates to stay competitive with our neighbors, especially when it comes to substitute teaching. And then we're excited, and I know Mrs. Bayless, please, talk to us about this, but we're excited that we held our first DEI meeting on January 31st. We had introductions of the group of the 27 members that sat on the DEI committee. We reviewed the board goal number 5. We developed community common understanding assignment that we had with us, and then we looked. We're as far as homework goes, we're trying to develop our mission and vision for moving forward. And then Mrs. Bayless asked the group to think about developing what the perfect community looks like. So I don't know, I would love for you to comment on how it all went.
So I would appreciate any feedback from Ms. McDonald or Mr. Johnson as well, who sit on our committee. But we had a really positive, really energetic meeting. People were on the committee were really engaged and wanting to contribute to the discussion. We had some good, we broke bread and had some dinner together, and we talked about establishing community as a committee to all be on the same page together as a community as we go forward. And then in building that community, we need to develop common understandings about where we're going as a community of learners together as a committee. We talked about how, in terms of developing community and common understanding, we went through an activity together and understanding our own identities, our social identity, and how our experiences shape our identity, and how we all come to the table with based on our own unique experiences, with our own unique voices, and the importance of, in terms of truly understanding one another, that we need to understand and honor each other's story and each other's identity. We did some work together on identity building and understanding. And then each meeting we plan to do some work together in terms of developing community. And then in phase 2 of it is we have work to do, right? So as you know, the board tasked us with establishing a committee, with developing a mission and a vision statement for the committee, with recommending policy to the board on a DEI policy, and beginning to establish a framework for our work as district in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So part of our homework then was to start looking at how to establish a mission and a vision, and we're going to look at that at the next meeting. At the next meeting, we'll also be reviewing the proposed policy. Everyone, BOCES Policy Services does provide policy for school districts across the state. So we'll be taking a look at reviewing that policy, as well as trying to determine how we might get feedback from our stakeholder groups in the form of a survey or something along those lines. So we understand we want to bring as many voices to the table as we can. So each meeting we plan to, again, develop community together and common understanding, as well as accomplish a task. So at our next meeting, we plan to focus on mission and vision and look at policy as we move towards ultimately establishing a framework to present to our board in June. I would welcome any feedback from Mr. McDonald and Mr. Johnson on your thoughts on the meeting. We also, at the end, we were putting together a website. So we're gathering information about all members of our committee, because we've got some really, really terrific and powerful community members and parents and teachers and support staff and administrators, all who bring just a rich and full experiences to the table to help us all as we explore this together. And we're going to keep building upon that with each meeting. But again, I hope if Mr. Gallagher and Mr. Johnson want to have any further comments on the first meeting anyway, or where we're going.
Yeah, I just, the way that it was set up was so cool. It was really cool. The physical setup, people who might never have had the opportunity to meet each other had a chance to have a conversation they would have otherwise never had. And it felt like building community in a very real and concrete way. And in a very important way for the task that's set for this particular committee. So I'm personally looking forward to the next meeting on the edge of my chair. Really looking forward to see what people come up with too, because it was just a really, really lovely, too short conversation that everyone really had a chance to have. And it was also like it happened in small groups. So there was 4 people at a table from different stakeholder groups talking about some really difficult topics. It was just really nice. It was a really great experience, and I hope that they continue that way.
Yeah, I would toss in there. I really enjoyed it myself, and the breakdown into the small groups like that was great. The people that were there, I might have met them in passing, except for one of the students. And I have to say, the students really amazed me, what they're going to bring to the table
I was
for this.
blown away.
Part of the process was that we talked with each other and learned about each other. And then we introduced the person to our right. So we had to at least understand what they were talking about. And Emily, one of the teachers, was to my right, and she had to introduce our student, Afifa Roja, I believe is her last name, if I remember correctly. Thank you. I see him shaking his head here. And just to listen what she already did, she's a junior in high school, and she's Bengali in background. They've only been in this country a couple of years. She speaks 5 languages, and the things she's already involved in, the teacher that introduced her finished up with saying, "I want to be her when I grow up." They're just, and you listen across all of our students and what they're bringing to the table for this group, I think is going to be fabulous.
It's nice that they're juniors because then, or younger, because then we can have them for a little while.
They're all juniors, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Good. So at least we've got them for another year.
And as we work on the next couple of months, a number of our community members or committee members have, I've asked if those would like to share and present and co-facilitate meetings based on areas of interest and expertise. So we're looking at, I've had a number of meetings scheduled over the next couple of weeks to help develop those meetings and what that might look like. And so I'm really encouraged by the interest and enthusiasm. I know Mr. McDonald has offered as well to like take a week, one of the meetings and work on that community building piece of it as we then move into the task piece each month. So very excited, and I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to do this very important work for our district.
Just wanted the website, you said that, did I hear you say there was a website being
Yeah, well,
developed?
so on our district website, there'll be a page for the DEI committee.
Okay.
It's not up yet. We're working on launching it, and essentially we're hoping that this page will tell our story. We hope to document our story and tell it together as a committee for the community to also be able then to read our progress and learn through our committee's learning together. So, and also I would also recognize part of the work that the board had requested that we look at in this area was to improve our foyer. To make our foyer a more welcoming setting for families as they come to district. So as you either come in or as you leave the building today, our foyer is halfway done with some new signage and some welcome. We're welcoming in 30 or 40 different languages in the foyer. We've got a world map and lots of quotes that speak to diversity and unity. And so we've got some other features going up over the next week. Should be finished by next week. But just trying to pull it all together as a district that we're physically welcoming as well for our families, so.
And I just, to frame kind of our conversation for Saturday, I attended a council school superintendent's luncheon held by Erie Niagara school superintendents on Friday. And this is one of the slides that they provided to us on budget projections. I know Sweet Home is slated over the next 2 budget cycles to become fully funded as far as our foundation aid formula goes, which is very good news for us. But the line on the governor's budget that she's projected out the next 5 years to run balanced budgets and not have any deficits over the next 5 years certainly projects well. Now, of course, all of this can change. But if you look at the previous 19, 20, 2021, 22 budgets, they all started with the governor's budget at running a deficit, and she's projecting not only 0%, but possibly budget surpluses averaging 5 billion over per year are projected. So, and then where the school aid projections are going as well, are look to be in good shape as well. So just to kind of frame our discussion for Saturday as we get into the budget workshop, just to let you know where kind of the state is when it comes to state budget projections.
Did they ask or explain why they thought she might be getting balanced and possible surplus as opposed to what her predecessor did?
Tax revenues are up 32%. And so sales tax, property tax, and they're seeing a windfall in revenue from there. Yeah.
I always thought her predecessor played a lot of smoke and mirror game. That's a
It's-
different story.
And I don't know if you felt this way. It's definitely a new day in Albany. I think there is more, transparency and definitely more communication, which is a difference in this budget cycle than in past, and with things like masking and those sort of things. So I hopefully this trend continues, but our president never sat down with school officials in a meeting like she did today. Her predecessor never did that. So so maybe it's a sign in the right direction. We'll see. And so another thing that I just want to make the board aware of is that we are developing and finalizing plans to distribute tests to our students before they leave for February break. In there, we're going to put a letter with that asking parents to have their child tested on the Saturday or Sunday before they come back on February 28th. This is kind of similar to the Christmas break program, although it's nice to have some time to plan for this one, for sure. So, so we have done that, and we also believe we have enough tests to hand out to the staff as well. So students first, then the staff, and we also have a supply of N95 masks. They do not require to be fit tested, which is good. And then staff have those at their disposal right now. They can take them and use them if they would like. So, so we do have those available to staff members at each one of our buildings, but we're excited to announce that we have tests thanks to the New York State Health Department, the Governor's Office, and the Erie County Department of Health, and we should have enough to pass out to faculty and staff as well. We're going to ask parents to have their child tested before they come back.
But that doesn't, if they don't test, they still come.
Yep, it's an optional thing, but they will have a free test at their disposal to do so. And then a couple positive notes. We want to congratulate, we found out yesterday that Alan Bakowitz is from the middle school, has been named a master teacher. This is a pretty rigorous program to get into, and there's a lot of study that goes with it. But they're expected to kind of pay it forward now as well and provide professional development for other people in the other teachers in the STEM community. So I want to say congratulations. I went to the middle school today to congratulate him personally, and I hope you don't mind, but maybe he could come to a future board meeting and he can talk to us about the program. I know Dr. English is part of it as well. So this is a pretty prestigious honor. I think there were 230 new ones named, and there's about 1,600, I think, in the program total now.
Yeah, and Sweet Home does have several. I don't remember the exact number, but there's several of them that are from
Yeah.
over the past couple of years.
It's a great program, a very prestigious honor to get, so. And then I just want to put out publicly a thank you to our school counselors and student support services staff. This is School Counselors Week. We know the challenges that they have faced this year, and it's been overwhelming at times, but the counselors here have really stepped up to the plate and kind of rethought their approach to mental health, especially coming out of the pandemic. So can't say thank you enough to our school counselors for all that they're doing with our student body on a daily basis, and some of our staff as well that are seeking those supports. So big kudos to our school counselors. And we had another snow event, so I would be remiss not to say thank you to Buildings and Grounds and our custodial staffs, and the town of Amherst and the town of Tonawanda. There was just, that night, that Thursday night, we expected 3 inches and we woke up to 6 to 8. And with buses kind of buried and roads kind of a mess. So they worked all through Friday, all through the night. We had all of our weekend events planned as it went forward as scheduled. And it's just a massive amount of work to clear that much snow in such a short period of time. So talking to Roman, I want to apologize because I think I screwed up the schedule, but we had really no choice on to close on that Friday. And then get everything back up running for the weekend. So.
Mike, I'm curious, it might be for Don, but I know the state law requires that the tops of any vehicles be cleaned off before they go. How do we do that with our buses? They're
Ladders.
not exactly close to the ground.
Yeah.
Is it ladders?
Ladders and snow, like the roof shovels,
Yeah.
those types of things, yeah, so they do all that stuff.
Who does it?
Well, generally the mechanics will come in early on a snow day event to do that, to pull the buses out so that we can plow. And then in an instance where there's a lot of snow, Bob will call in drivers and then they'll work to help as well. So it's a really a tag team kind of operation because we're working with less space over there now with the capital project. So
Right.
it's not as easy to maneuver the buses around. But we were ready to go. It was just a matter of side streets and things like that weren't quite there.
Oh, that sounds like a lot of work that's, behind the scenes stuff we never see.
Yes.
So I was curious. I'm just thinking, okay.
Yep.
Like you said, just cleaning my own car off versus a 60-foot long bus.
Yeah.
You happen to be up at 4 or 5 in the morning. They
Yeah,
probably
come on
know.
over, get me in. I need a heavy duty ladder.
And if you weren't, hopefully our text got you up, and that's-
You're always welcome to come over. too.
Thanks.
I got a question on this, the decision
Yeah.
of snow days, and that is one of the things that I have noticed in my neighborhood and is a little bit of a concern. And I'm just wondering about the communication that you may have with the town or with, regarding clearings and things like that is outside of the streets. Like I have noticed situations where the kids do not, if they're waiting for the buses, they do not have, there's so much snow. They either have to wait in the street or they have to climb over a snow mound, which seems like it could be dangerous, or in the crossing guards also may not have a place to stand. So just something, again, like I noticed, I think at one of the schools, there was a crossing guard, like couldn't stand on the sidewalk because there's no place for them. So I appreciate the fact that Friday, there was off because not only being a Friday, I think it gave the whole weekend to clear those areas for the kids and the crossing guards, which, is something I know is beyond just the streets, right? It's, and that's certainly, so I just wondering, is that a discussion point that I would imagine it is with buildings and grounds or the town for the safety of the kids and again, the crossing guards?
So I think, just for this example, Brian, that night I went to bed fully thinking that, we would have school the next day. And so I woke up, but I did set my alarm for 4:30 and, I looked out the window. Actually, I can't see very well, so I asked my wife to look out the window, and she said it's bad. And then so I got my glasses on and I looked out, it's bad. And then I think I texted Don probably at 4:45, and then Don started texting Steve and Bob Westlack at Transportation to kind of get their take on what was going on. I did have communications with Supervisor Culpa through the morning as well. The guys are working, we're trying to get the side streets, but I think one of the considerations is just that, the sidewalks, the bus stop areas. While they worked to get the streets done, we knew sidewalks and bus stops might be an issue as well. And then through communications with Amherst, Kenton, Tonawanda, Clarence, they were having the same kind of discussions we were, so I was on a text thread with them as well. And then, a couple of them decided to close, and I think us and Williamsville were the last ones to kind of hang on at that point. So, so it's a process for sure. And, but all of that, yeah, for sure is taken into
And
consideration.
Mr. Alival, I'll also add, like, our crew, our buildings and grounds crew generally, depending upon when the snow arrives, of course, but in this past instance, they started at about 3:30.
Yeah.
So I started making phone calls to Dave Clare and his crew about 10 after 4, just to kind of get their thoughts and see if we would be ready to go in anticipation of a phone call from Mr. Genestri. The buildings were clear, but, they all go out to all the buildings, and, their messages back to me were that the side streets were awful. And I'll just, to your other point about sidewalks and things like that, it was better for this snow event. Our last snow that we got caught on, the streets didn't get plowed as timely as maybe we would have hoped. Like, we started clearing out the side, because it's our responsibility, obviously, to clear out the sidewalks here on Sweet Home Road. They started clearing out the sidewalks on Sweet Home Road. Then the county plows came down the road and they had to start all over again. So sometimes we're playing catch up, to be quite honest with you. And, obviously the first and foremost piece of it is to get the buildings open, ready to go, parking lots so buses can get in, and then we hit the sidewalks after the fact. But at each of the buildings, aside from the major thoroughfares, the custodians all have their own snow blowers and snow equipment so that they can snow blow the sidewalks around the buildings.
I have one last question here, just about the upcoming events. And here it says our budget session's at 8 a.m. The agenda for it says 9 a.m.
9.
I thought it was 9. I just wanted to make sure.
It
I
is,
suggested 8 and
I don't
everybody
care
said,
when we
no,
come, I just,
no,
okay.
too
I-
early.
Amy
we
shaking
can
her head.
start at 8 if you would like. It's,
Yeah, no.
all right.
Okay, so it is 9 o'clock. I just
9
want to make
o'clock.
sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's- I get it. I
No
get it.
problem. Any other questions? Okay. Thank
I
you.
have one super simple one, just because I've been curious forever. Who plows the bridge, the pedestrian bridge? Is that us or is that the town?
Don't know, it's not us.
Okay. Because it's always done. I'm always impressed. It's like one of the first things that's done.
I don't know.
Town trucks.
And super- go ahead.
One real quick thing also, I just wanted to also express my kudos to the crew that clears Heritage.
Mhm.
Because with the amount of snow that we've had, the mounds are so high, it's hard to see getting out of that parking lot. So I appreciate that they cut that down and still make the sidewalk accessible. So I appreciate whoever is doing that over there.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll let them know.
Thank you.
What else? That concludes your report?
That concludes my
That
report.
concludes, okay, so up to upcoming events. And you can read those just as well as I can. So next is our new business. We'll start with A, special education and class placements. And I've gotten through half of it, of 79 pages. A lot of new kids still coming. Transfers in. We'll get the monthly financial reports for next week. C is the revised policy second reading. Any questions on those? D is revised policy 1410 first reading.
I just see that noted that 5230 is on their acceptance of gifts. That's one we started with a
Right.
little while back. And I want to thank John and his office and Mike and everybody else who might have been involved in that and getting it together. I think they've come together with a good plan as to how it's going to be handled to make sure we're doing this properly and everybody's aware of doing it properly.
E is our corrective action plan in response to the internal auditor's report that's dealing with accounts payable. Yes,
It was dealing with the the general functions of the business office, from budget monitoring to cash flow management, to accounts payable to payroll.
F is disposal of obsolete property. We've got 3 washing machines. G is something we've talked about, the district substitute rates. Stop me if there's any questions. H are some new appointments. I is acceptance of a donation. Do we know yet who?
Yeah, so.
I had asked him who Karen Holmes was because I did not know.
Karen Holmes was a librarian at Heritage Heights in the mid 70s to late 80s. And she recently passed away. There is a teacher here whose parents snowbirded with Mrs. Holmes and became friends. And there were a collective group of friends down in the Florida area where Mrs. Holmes was that wanted to do something to honor her and her legacy. So they all decided to donate money to the school district to allow the librarian at Heritage to purchase books.
Beautiful.
They raised about $1,100, I think it was.
Nice.
Nice. Thank you for finding out who they, I mean, we're accepting this gift. I'd like to know who she was.
Yep.
And J is our C-Corps. It's a capital outlay project.
Yep, you'll have the resolution in time to vote next week.
Okay, excellent.
That is the capital outlay project that, if you remember, was due to happen last year. We had issues with our contractor. It's essentially the same project. They just need to amend the language, and the attorneys are working on it.
Okay. Anyone have any questions on any of those?
I did actually have a question, not really on one of those, kind of. You mentioned new kids coming in with the special ed placements.
Yep.
At the beginning of the school year, we were talking about our space issues and all the new kids coming in. If we're still getting more, how are we doing with space?
Don laughs.
You're gonna find out on Saturday.
All right.
You know, spacing is an issue. Capacities of classrooms, obviously, high need special ed kids is an issue. We are sending a lot of related services through BOCES, a lot of kids through BOCES. So, you know, right now, we're seeing a significant cost increase just because of the influx of kids that we did not expect. So everybody's getting the services, obviously, that they need. It just may be through BOCES.
Did the governor make any mention of reducing social distancing requirements within the elementary school setting?
It's all been about masking.
All right, next, that takes us to informational items. Roman.
All right. One moment, please, while I pull out some notes. Okay. So, I have three topics that I really want to go over. The first is our big winter dance that we've now decided to brand as a winter festival rather than a dance, because it's not going to be as formal as a regular school dance would be. Obviously, we can't really dress up with this kind of weather. So we are currently in the planning process. We're hoping to get this the day before break. The biggest reason I was upset about the snow day was because it got in the way of that planning process, and now we're getting close to that deadline, and we really have to start working on it. But student government formed a subcommittee that is committed on making it all happen and making it work. I'm truly hopeful that we'll be able to pull this off in time, and that we'll have a good time for all the students before we go into winter break. So our plans with the garden. I'm not sure how to put this, but we sort of have both good news and bad news. Due to a miscommunication, we essentially missed a deadline to apply for a grant. So in order to get that grant money, we'd have to apply next year. So we wouldn't necessarily be able to get everything we wanted this year, like start working on the greenhouse
for a garden. That's something that we want to do with the grant money. However, the good news is, as Brian Label pointed out, in I believe our last meeting, the Willow Ridge community has also started plans to make a garden, and student government has collaborated with them and essentially tried to figure out how to best follow what their example and see what they're doing to get a garden done. It's hopefully going to be very successful. And I know that there's plans for some of the people in my student government to essentially come in front of the school board and ask for money to help with this school garden project. So I hope you'll get to meet them and they'll have a pitch ready and everything. So you can all talk to them and ask questions and truly interact with my student government
Do you have a
committees.
date yet? For them
Not
to
yet.
come?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I'll probably inform you ahead of time. And lastly, there's been a lot of, let's say, concerns about next year in the senior lounge because of the renovation projects with the, you're going to take out the wall to essentially put steel in there and then work on the auditorium. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, a lot of juniors and a lot of my constituents are asking about what they're going to do for a senior lounge next year. Do
Sure.
we have an answer for that?
Sure. So there's a couple pieces to that, Roman. Your characterization of taking kind of the wall off the front of the senior lounge is accurate, and which would mean that the senior lounge would be kind of unusable, obviously, for the next school year. Because what'll happen is there's no easy way to get to the auditorium, and that's pretty much a straight shot. And the stuff that they're going to be bringing in there to renovate the auditorium can't really walk around corners. So 601, which I don't know if you've ever been into, is a kind of an amphitheater type room. It's in the math science tech wing, and it's in the back of the room, comes right out to the lobby. If you know where that wheel is in the lobby, right across from the main office, the plan is to kind of blow that wall out and make that area kind of a student common area. And Mr. Perry and his team kind of know about it. They've talked about some ideas. But the work in that area is probably going to start sometime this spring, because Mrs. Delaplan has moved all of the classes and study halls out of that area. So the work in that area will start. We'll be able to open up that area at the start of school in September. The thought process would be that we would use that area as an additional eating area and/or senior lounge. Okay, so there's a space there. That's not necessarily the senior lounge as you come to know it, but it's a space that if the high school administration agrees, that it could certainly be used to kind of replace what was once the senior lounge for the year.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
I believe that's everything I want to go over.
Great, thank you. Peter?
Okay, a couple of things. One, just want to congratulate all the students at Glendale. They collected over 2,600 cans of food for the chef drive last month. The PTA did surprise the kids, which was supposed to be on the Friday snow day, with a pizza snack party. They just moved this back to Monday. So yesterday, the students at Glendale received a pizza snack in the afternoon as a thank you from the PTA. Getting ready for spring chocolate and flower sales. That's about all I got from Glendale. On the 26th of January, I attended the delegate assembly meeting for the Erie County Association of School Boards. They have some workshops and spring speedboarding in the early planning stages. The annual dinner is going to be June 9th. Law conference is scheduled for August 3rd. And we did approve the budget that was presented to us from the budget committee. So that's just the update from the school board.
Thank you. Scott, I see your book.
several pages. On the second, I attended the first part of the Capitol Conference. It was virtual this year, as it was last year. We had messages from the top people at the school boards, and then we had the State Education Department join us. It was Commissioner Rosa and Jim Baldwin, the Deputy Commissioner. They spent some time discussing the importance of the DEI initiative and customizing education for all students. They also stressed that the foundation formula must be addressed, along with broadband access and maintenance of those things into the future too. Run it just like we, replacing stuff now. You can't just forget it, just put it in once and forget it. Then we got a budget proposal analysis. They talked about quite a few different things and where we are. There was a couple of things. One of them, they had some concerns about a November 1st database freeze on aid, setting the dates, how things gets done, because they do change over the course of the year. Let's see, I'm sorry. Oh, and there was another one in the budget, and this is something that Cuomo also tried to do in the past, was to provide elimination of the state's share of CSE placements. I thought I had the number, but it amounts to a fairly significant amount of money that would drop back down the school districts for everybody that we place outside of the school at other facilities. So that's something we need to stress. And they also talked about the zero emissions buses, that anything new would have to be zero emission by July 1st, 27. Was that the date you'd been told to, Don? Because it didn't sound familiar to me, so I just want to make sure. And then entire fleet by July 1st of 35. And then the last one they dropped in was there was possible new ethics rules for school board members, which I'm not sure how fit the state budget as opposed to SED, but whatever, I'm waiting to hear more on that. And then finally, the Daniel Fuller, who's the Deputy Secretary for Education, came in and talked, and he talked a lot about the same things they'd already gone through in the budget proposal. Then we had Senator Mayer, who's senator from Yonkers, but she chairs the Senate Education Committee, and Senator Liu, who chairs the New York City Senate Education Committee, talked with us about a few things, and they also talked about the update, the foundation aid formula. Senator Mayer agrees that it needs to be updated, but she doesn't believe there should be a total rewrite, that it should be fixing the data, like things like, we're using a 2000 census instead of 2020, things like that. Senator Liu brought up some concerns about teaching history correctly, and he left it at that. And Senator Mayer then added that she believes the legislature has a role in deciding what is taught for history. I'm not sure about that, but no. And then finally, we talked to the NISBA message about when we're meeting with our legislators, which is tomorrow. Let's see, we had a policy committee meeting. I talked on that. Most of them were pretty straightforward. I attended the Rick Timms meeting on the 3rd. I added that to the thing, posted that, the stuff he did. For those who have seen Rick Timms in the past, he talked a lot about the same things he always does, about not leaving any money on the table, with going right to the tax cap, which we did not do last year. He's very adamant about that. For those of you who are not familiar with Rick Timms, he does this school aid foundation, or not, he's got a right name for it. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name. It's written in the document, but he talks a lot about the money, and he spends a lot of time dealing with the money and explaining to the legislatures where things go. And he dives into the details quite deeply. One of the things he brought up, as did a few others, is to also talk with the legislator at SED, is that there's currently a $30,000 cap on BOCES salary aid reimbursement that we can get. And I'm sure Peter knows a lot about that. And but anyway, and it's been the same way since 1992. And it's just not right, because obviously that's not what the teachers are making over there. So we're not able to apply for all the aid reimbursement on the kids that we send through BOCES. That was one of the things we should stress. Finally, the biggest one was, I was on short notice on Monday afternoon. I was out hiking and I got a call from the NISBA office saying that we were meeting with the governor's office today. So obviously I sent something to each of you just asking for a quick thought, and I appreciate you sending me back. And we also were told we couldn't tell people it was the governor's office.
I
but we
wondered,
did.
because you didn't
Yeah, they
include
wouldn't.
that.
They
I'm like,
wouldn't.
was
Yeah.
it a PTA meeting? What
Yeah,
was it?
they made us keep that quiet. That was part of it. And like I said, it was very short notice. They were also meeting with other stakeholders. We did meet directly with the governor. It was all pretty well timed out. It ran 45 minutes, and they had a variety of speakers, all pre-assigned from different groups. The Superintendent's Association had somebody, and her name, Phyllis, and I'm sorry, I don't have, is she the statewide
She's the
leader?
president of the New York State Council of Schools.
Okay, I didn't catch her last time, but I assume that's where she fit in. She talked about it and she got, let's see, I'm trying to look. She said she's getting pushback from previous supporters who, supported the mask mandate, because this is primarily about the mask mandate, is what she was talking about. And she said using vaccination rates as a metric would not be well received. The governor did start off with a speech, and then she did actually address each of the people that we were talking as we went along. She did give us some quick statistics. She's proud of where test to stay is. They want to keep it going. Currently about 22 cases per 100,000. They were up at close to 400 about a month ago. And she did mention only about 30% of kids 5 to 11 are fully vaxxed. Let's see. The governor wants to see the numbers after the February break to see what they are, because she said, then she's hiking, she referred back to November. If we looked at the November numbers that were also great, and said something we were going to do in December, and then December skyrocketed, she doesn't want to be in that same position. She did talk, and Mike mentioned a little bit here, about using different factors as long there. And I know the state the director of the Department of Health also talked about the same thing today. She didn't specify which factors, other than they were going to discuss a number of factors. Vaccination rate was just one of them, was also infection rates, hospitalization rates, et cetera, and make sure that all those rates are going in the right direction. Dana Playton, who's the current New York State PTA president, had prepared remarks, and they're actually available on their website if you want to read all the details. Their biggest thing was focusing on schools staying open full-time. And they support parents' rights to determine kids wearing masks post-mandate whenever that occurs. And she's, they were pushing the parents to talk with their child's pediatrician about that, not getting it from other sources. They strongly oppose a vaccine mandate. And they suggested that remote learning may need to continue for a few limited students with comorbidities. And the governor agreed with just about everything she said. She was clear about that. New York State School Boards Association, our new president, Peggy Zugaby, talked. They don't have a formal position. It was actually discussed at our convention last year. And obviously different school boards around the state have different feelings. So they did not agree to any one formal position about it. What she did say is some of what I said before. We're not the medical experts on this. We want to be trusting the science. And they stressed, and again, this is what Mike was just talking about a little bit ago, that they need clarity on requirements and consistency, and that's the most imperative thing that comes out of whatever the governor's office ends up doing. And they also said decisions can't be made because of political pressures. They must be based on the science. And the governor, again, said we are following the science and we're in a better place than many states. The School Administrators Association leader talked to us. He said we need a clearly articulated policy, which must have a sufficient time frame for implementation. And if there's any local decisions, they must be collaborative with other districts and departments of health, even across county lines. Prime example here is if you look to the Akron School District, they cut into four different counties that they cut into. So, how do you in one county health department say one thing and the other three say three entirely different things. Governor again responded, we have time. They want to get through the February break. Finally, Reverend Steve Lopez, who's the Conference of the Big Five Schools leader and president of the Yonkers School District, again urged him to follow the science. And he said, must be a uniform change by Department of Health. And I mentioned this before, it shouldn't be down to the superintendents and the boards. It has to be the responsibility not of educators, but of the State Department of Health. After that, Dan Fuller took a few more questions. And he did say he was going to be reaching out to us the next day or so to get more feedback from the people who were not allowed to talk. I don't know exactly how many people were on the call because they didn't tell us and we couldn't see them, but he did reach out for that. So I'm going to try and mold together what you guys shared with me and send that off to him. I'm going to try and do it tomorrow. I'm not going to wait. And then you might have passed me in the hall. I was having a meeting with some of the people who are going to be participating in the legislative meetings tomorrow to try and talk about some of the plans we're going to have with the various legislative meetings. And tomorrow I have meetings scheduled with 11 of our local legislators throughout the day, including all 4 of our representatives. So I'll hear more about that next week. And that's all I've got to say. Was that enough?
It's a good thing you're retired.
Yeah, I know it.
You guys want to hear about what I did at work today, or anything?
At least I'll type some of that up and send it to you. It's good.
Well, thank you for representing us at all
Yeah,
these
thank
meetings
you,
too.
thank
It's
you.
appreciated. You're a good voice for us, so thank you.
Mhm.
Kaylee.
Yeah, I did not do that much. I attended the legislative committee, but Scott covered a lot of stuff that they talked about that was about to happen at the legislative meeting that has since happened. The meetings with our local legislators are happening tomorrow. I can't attend, so I'm really grateful that you're going to be there. I also attended the DEI committee first meeting, which was wonderful, and we talked about that already. So that's pretty much what I've been up to. Although I do want to say, the Bill Track 50, we did at the legislative meeting a roundup of bills that have been introduced in the Assembly or the Senate. I have a list. They're at the very beginning stages right now. I'm not on Bill Track 50. I need to email Jane about it.
Yeah, Jane will be able to get you an account on there so you can see that stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that. Actually, they also, they extended an invitation to all board members who want Bill Track 50, I
I
believe.
think they did. I'm not
That
sure. I
was
get some,
mentioned At the delegate
Okay.
assembly meeting.
Good.
That is available for everybody.
okay.
So basically, Bill
thought
Track
you said that.
50 is a way to track what's being introduced
Sure.
to the state assembly and senate, and it flags all of the education-oriented bills, and it tells you who's supporting them, so that we can reach out to our legislators. And it seems really cool, and I just keep meaning to get to it. One of those things. But you're all also invited to.
Yeah, our goal is to target the bills in New York, obviously, with them, but you can actually look at them around the country if you really
Oh,
feel
that's
so
cool.
inclined.
Okay, thank you. All right, you're up.
Sure. I attended Maple Mere's PTA meeting this past week, I think it was. It was, I think now you're starting to see, at least with some of the sport groups, some definite COVID fatigue. You know, I think their fundraising has been a little bit underwhelming. You know, the participation in events is, especially when they're virtual, of course, has been equally underwhelming. They just had their Maple Mere experience a couple weeks ago, and attendance was quite poor. But I thought I was going to the multicultural night, which Ms. McDonald covered the legislative meeting for me, but then I showed up and there was just 2 cleaners there. So apparently that's been rescheduled. That was great. It was on the DO calendar, but it's been moved to tomorrow. So I'll go to that. Last night was Chef's meeting. They presented on some of the initiatives that the counseling services and students themselves been involved in mental health issues. I wasn't able to attend, but Mrs. LeBrake did provide me videotaped recording of the meeting, so I'll take a look at it. I was able to watch a couple minutes of that section today about the mental health. It was, at least a little bit I saw, it was really interesting and quite moving, the things that they're really getting after and of their own initiatives. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Brian.
Yeah, I just want to mention a couple things. One is, and I know a number of us attended the opening of the service center,
I was gonna say, nobody
Oh,
mentioned
yeah.
the service center.
28th. And so that's, it's beautiful, obviously a beautiful facility and building, and it was nice to see. And I have some family that works there, so, and they've expressed their, among their coworkers, real appreciation. And, I think they're really excited about the facility. And then also attended the internal audit committee meeting on February 1st, and related to the service center and the audit committee, I just, I want to mention and appreciate everything that Don does. There was on that audit committee, very minor findings as somebody who's done audits in the past. And I know also with the service center and, kind of overseeing the construction, a lot of pieces of that. I know at times I can ask you some unusual or maybe some tough questions. And so I think it's also important to recognize the good work that's done as well. And then a policy committee meeting, which we talked about on February 2nd. And also an event that a number of us attended was the National Honor Society induction ceremony on the 2nd as well. And so congratulations to all those students. That was nicely done. And then on the 3rd, Willow Ridge had a PTO meeting. They are similar to what Mr. Feldman mentioned, some COVID fatigue. I think there's elements of that and the challenges of wanting to have events, but the social distancing is really a challenge, much more so than masks, because, kids and parents will attend events with masks, but you can only have so many people in the buildings and things like that. So that makes that a challenge, but they are having a virtual dance on Friday. They're preparing for 100 days of 100 days in school event and Valentine's. My wife texted me. She said they're preparing for Valentine's Day as well. That may have been a reminder to me, though, really. But, and then
I like your style.
I had my monthly update with Mr. Polino, and again, he just mentioned that the social distancing from an operational point of view is much more challenging than the mask, because in to some degree more more stressful, because even the teachers, when they're having events within the class, the mask they don't have to think about as much as, okay, is this student next to this student, and those kinds of things. So it would be nice that that would be on the agenda, on the governors and the people that are making those decisions and their agenda as well. But again, I'm not the person with the expertise on when that should be up for discussion. But anyway, so those are the points in the events that I attended. Oh, and one other thing, and I think you may have the article here, but
Oh, I do. If anybody wants to read it.
I just want to say congratulations to the girls basketball team. There was a nice article in the Buffalo News 2 days ago. It was really the feature article in
Did
the
everybody catch it? I can pass it
sports
around.
page. It was just nicely done, and they're having a great season. And it's nice to see that they got the recognition.
And it was an awesome game last night, just an awesome game.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. I am not a #1 basketball fan, I can tell you that, but I had it on during the PTSA meeting that I attended last night, and wow,
It was electric in the gym. It was great.
it was electric in my living room. It was a fantastic game.
Yeah.
Kudos to the girls for hanging on and pulling it out.
I may have a video of Coach Murak's victory dance. If you can find it. There might be a little bit of black mirror there.
Yeah.
I need to see that.
Thank you, Brian. Go ahead, Amy.
So yes, I did watch the game last night. The girls are wow, just wow. They did an amazing job. I was on the PTSA meeting for the middle school last night. They talked about having several positions open on their board coming next year. And also a lot of discussion around the student experience and enhancing what they might be able to do for kids. They're talking about maybe bringing activity night back and doing it outside. When the weather breaks a little bit, Panther Pride is starting up again. They just really feel that the students are in need of something to be excited about. The COVID fatigue is, as much as they wanted to be back in the buildings, it's not what it used to be, and they're really kind of struggling with some of that. So the PTA is working with the administration to find some ways to celebrate kids and really bring the excitement back into the building. So that was a big part of the conversation yesterday. Other than that, everything else that I did was already touched on. So that's it for me.
Okay, thank you. I too went to the service center, and I just have to mention this, that when I talked to some of the drivers there, first thing they said to me is, you know what, one of them said to me, I don't have to get my knee replacement now because it's a one floor and it's, kind of the older population. And I had a few people say it's so much easier on their knees. So National Honor Society, I love how the parents pin on for the kids. That just brings that special touch to it. And the only other thing I want to mention is my husband and I, we do a spreadsheet of all the high school musicals as they start to come up. So we were looking on the Sweet Home website, it's a little difficult to see, it's not out there, what they're doing. So you might want to mention to the music staff, needs to be a little more prominent, because I can't find it on the website, what we're doing.
Okay, we'll get
Okay.
information on tickets. and
Thank you,
things like
thank
that.
you.
We'll put it up on the website.
All right, and that's it for me. So this takes us to our next open session. Anybody want to say anything else? If you do, I have to read this, but if you're done. All right, let's read it. Second open session, as per board policy 1512, we hold 2 open sessions at each meeting. The second session may be used to address the board on topics appropriate for open session. The board welcomes attendance and participation by district residents, people having business within the boundaries of the school district, and people who do business with the Board of Education. Speakers must be at least 16 and are limited to 3 minutes. Please preface your comments with your name, address, and group affiliation if appropriate.
I think it's very, very terrible, these mask things, and the vaccine, it doesn't work. I think, you know, if you do have the power to lift the, you know, I just don't think some of the superintendents have. Definitely, I'm pretty sure they have taken the mask mandate out of their schools, made it optional. The test to stay sounds terrible. They need to, this, you know, people are so concerned about safety and stuff. It's like viruses, little bugs, they come and go, they take their toll. They linger on, AIDS, whatever. But it's not going to kill its host species. It's just cowardly almost. Else. You guys were talking about some of the kids being very depressed and down. Maybe they'd like to maybe see some smiles, see their teacher smile. Facial expression is a kind of an important social development skill, right? Maybe we should take the mask off them. I hope you all think about that, lose sleep about it. Yeah, unmask our kids. And don't be pushing any vaccines on that doesn't work. I'll think of more.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, that takes us to personnel, both teaching and administrative, as well as service. And we'll be voting on that next week. So could I have a motion to adjourn to executive session for personnel?
So moved.